Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. Hey, what's up, and welcome to QnA, the show where I take your questions and answer them here in video format. A ton of questions to get into, so let's just jump into it. First question comes from Archangel, who says, Q, I'm 37 and a lifelong Browns fan. It's getting harder to stay loyal to the team. How do you manage to maintain enjoyment after so many seasons like 2024? Okay. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, being a Browns fan, something I just wake up and I do every day. I don't really think about it like that. I don't really, it's not really an option for me to not be a Browns fan anymore. Not just because I do this, but also just because I'm just going to always want the Browns to win because I'm just that deep into it. I'm a Browns fan. I can't say no to it. So the question of staying loyal, like, that never really enters my mind. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I could never see myself rooting for another team or deciding to wear another jersey, because I don't just root for the Browns because I like the colors or I like some of the players on the team. I root for the Browns because I'm from Cleveland. And, like, I'm not about to switch on my hometown because the team's having a down year or two. Like, that's not me. I'm gonna rock with it, right? We having some down years, we having some up years. At the end of the day, my birth certificate say I was born in Cleveland, so I'm a root for Cleveland, so it's not really an option for me to even entertain the thought of disloyalty to the Cleveland Browns, because, like, again, I don't root for them because Jimmy Haslam or any of the players on the team. I root for them because they got Cleveland on their name. They represent the city of Cleveland, and I know when the Browns win, Cleveland wins. So, it's not really a choice. There's no other team that could make me feel the way that they do, even when they get small victories, like the Cleveland Browns can, because I'm from Cleveland. I have civic pride in that. So it don't matter how much the Browns lose. I'm always going to be looking forward to what's next. So, I don't really know how to help you there. I don't know what your specific relationship to the team is, but there's a reason you root for the Cleveland Browns. And the reason you stay with the Cleveland Browns 37 years, like you said in your comment, is because you have a reason, right? Maybe your parents are from Cleveland and this is your way of showing love to them. Or maybe it's about a connection you had with somebody in your life and the Browns were a part of that, and that's why you root for the Browns, or something along those lines. For me, it's deeper than how good the team does on the field every year. It's about my connection to the Cleveland Browns and their connection to the city of Cleveland, where I'm from, and the connection the team has to the larger population of the city of Cleveland that keeps me there. Like, if they move the Browns from, like, Cleveland to St. Louis, then yeah, that kills the Browns for me. Like, I don't have a team really, but that's what keeps me a Browns fan more than anything. Drill says, is taking Shador Cam Ward at 2, then trading Miles to win now to a win now team with a high pick like the Cowboys at 12 or the 49ers at 11 and take Mykel Williams or Mike Green with that pick a good idea? Yeah. I mean, it's an idea. I can't say it's good. You're trading a generational player, a first ballot Hall of Famer if he retires today, for a quarterback prospect that is not in the realm of what normally goes in the top 5, right? You're talking about one of the weaker quarterback prospects to be selected in the top 3 since, like, Mitchell Trubisky went in 2017. And then pairing that up with a solid edge prospect in either Mike Green or Mykel Williams. No, I mean, that's not a good idea. Like, I can't call it a good idea. I have to feel like the Browns win. I don't think the Browns win in that one, but is it an idea that nobody's going to clown you for? Sure. So That's what I would say. Like, I don't look. There's not a lot that can be a good idea when it comes to trading Myles Garrett. To be honest with you. Matt says, keep up the quality of videos. If anything keeps Myles, I do Stafford while picking up Carter with the second, and then Howard later on in the third. If you like JJ, as some people do, if he would be better than what's coming out this year in the quarterback's room, let me know. I mean, I really haven't gone back and like reevaluated J.J. McCarthy. And I'm be honest with you, I didn't really evaluate him much last year because the Browns didn't have a first round pick, right? I was more worried about guys who would be there in the second and third round for the Cleveland Browns, tackles. Last year, a quarterback was not something that the Browns were going to look at, in especially the quarterbacks that were projected to go first round. Just wasn't something I thought of doing last year. So I don't really have that much of a feeling outside of like when I watched JJ McCarthy play at Michigan on like regular broadcasts. I wasn't like jumping for joy of the ideal of the Browns possibly getting him from that experience. But again, haven't really looked into him that much. That being said, yeah, I do agree with you. I think Matt Stafford is the guy that you can go and get that will bring enough hope to where you might get a change of heart from somebody like Myles Garrett. All right, this one is from Aaron, who says, love the videos, Q. I heard you say if we wait to draft the quarterback next year, there will be players of Ward or Sanders caliber, even late in the first. If you were Barry and you were not guaranteed job security, would that change your draft? I know the best player available, but the position being such a big hole, it is tough not to want to get rich quick and reach on a quarterback. But exactly, you set the terms right there. Get rich quick. If I know anything about get rich quick schemes from watching videos on the internet, it's that get rich quick schemes usually end up in the dude who does it being broke. Right? So if I'm Andrew Berry, I don't think I can go into this draft get rich quick scheme, right? I don't feel like that's how Andrew Berry can go about it. If you're Andrew Berry, even if your job security is not 100%, you got to operate this job like you're going to be here for the next few years, right? Because if you do not operate in that way, you're going to damage the team and make them worse in the long run. And if the team doesn't have a terrible season and you do keep your job, that's going to be shit you have to dig yourself from up out of. So no, I don't think you can operate like that. I think if you're Andrew Berry, you got to treat it like you have no job security concerns whatsoever, and that you're going to go forward with what you feel like is the best plan for the Cleveland Browns in the long term. Maybe short term, it's not the greatest plan for the Browns to win the most games, right? Maybe it's not the most instant gratification-led pathway for the Cleveland Browns, but you feel like this is going to be what makes this the better team in 5 years, or not even in 5 years. This is what you feel like is going to make a better team in the long run than if you would have moved in a more reactionary way. So that's how Andrew Berry has to look at this. It has to be for the better of the Cleveland Browns. And he can't just short-sighted and just start hitting a bunch of shortcuts, right? Because then he's definitely going to get fired. Also, don't underestimate, like, if Andrew Berry's ability to keep his job is not going to be as tied to his win-loss record as much as it's going to be tied to his ability to sell a plan to ownership, right? And if he basically pushes all the cards in and says there's no more plan going forward, I'm going to just do whatever I feel like is going to help me keep my job, then there's no plan to sell ownership at the end of the year if things do go wrong. So he has to just operate with a plan. Be a man with a plan, right? If you give ownership some hope that things will be better, I think you have a better chance of keeping your job regardless of what happens this season, win-loss wise. Because there are ways you can like push in all the chips to make the playoffs, and you make the playoffs and you lose and you get fired too. If you make the picture look extremely bleak after it. So, winning isn't the only thing that would keep Andrew Berry his job. I know some people are going to be furious when they hear that, but that's just the reality. Big Griff says, yo, Q, I think the Browns should focus on getting younger and preparing our next window. It sucks. We never saw true team success with a guy like Joel or Miles. I mean, we did have 2 winning seasons, so we saw some success. It's not like Miles went like 0-16 his whole career. But we need to get younger. A trade scenario I really like is sending Miles, Greg Newsome, a day 2 pick to the Texans for Will Anderson in a 2026-27 first. If we draft Abdul, we'd have a great long-term edge duo to build around the capital to move up for a quarterback, as well as allowing the Texans to go all in now. What do you think about that trade idea? This is interesting because, like, I think I posted this trade idea like a week ago. Or when did I do that? I did it on Monday, right? And now it's coming back to me in the ether. So, yeah, I mean, like this, if you got Myles Garrett, and I don't think I included Greg Newsome in there because I don't think Greg Newsome would be necessary to include in this, or even a day 2 pick. If you got for Myles Garrett, Will Anderson, and picks, that will be a good enough package to where people will not clown you, and you would get something tangible in return. You're getting Will Anderson, a 10-sack-a-year guy. You wouldn't feel completely hopeless about 2025 if the Browns made that trade, right? Or you wouldn't feel like a lot's riding on a couple of prospects. So yeah, I mean, that trade would be as good as it can get for a trade for Myles Garrett in this offseason. You would still have to deal with the cap ramifications of that, right? Which would be in this, you would be offsetting Myles a little bit with getting rid of a day 2 pick and getting rid of Greg Newsome. But you would be bringing on Will Anderson, so that would be more APY, and then you spread out the first over a few years. So I think this is about as good as a scenario you can get for the Browns. And it would get them younger. And I think it's something that they would entertain. I just don't know if the offer would come, to be honest with you, because even though the Texans are one of those teams I have tagged, it's like, hey, they could be desperate enough to do it. I have a hard time believing that they think they're like this close to doing it, considering they just fired their offensive coordinator. Adrian says, Q, I listen to your videos every day at work. Appreciate you, man. It gets me through the morning. Appreciate you. Keep up the good work. If we got Matt Stafford, do you think it solves our problem at quarterback enough to ensure a contending team at the conference championship level? Also, do you think that this would be a perfect/good fit for Kevin? Yeah, it'd be a great fit for Kevin in this offense. It would be a fantastic fit. Matt Stafford does everything that Kevin will want to do. Do I think it would make the Browns a championship level contender, like a conference championship game level contender? I think it would be possible. I would feel like I would expect this team to get to the playoffs with Matt Stafford. I wouldn't be surprised if they won a playoff game. I would be ecstatic if they got to a conference championship game. So that tells me I would be a little surprised. So I don't know if my expectation would be, no, this conference championship contention level team. But depending on how well they play, you know, if you get Abdul Carter back there and that makes the defense is absolutely locked down, then you start to get excited and you start to think you have more of a chance. But yeah, you would feel like you have as good as a shot as anybody without a elite quarterback to win a championship or to get to the conference championship game. You would still have to answer that question. How are you going to win this Super Bowl or get to a conference championship game without an elite quarterback? The answer probably would be defense. Next question comes from John, who says, while you were at the Senior Bowl, you continued to comment about how deep the D-line class was. However, I have yet to see you mock many defensive line to us other than Carter. I don't know, man. I've mocked a fair amount of interior guys to the Cleveland Browns. What are your current projected starters at the defensive line, especially IDL? And who do you think that we may add overall? How well do you think we could perform all season if Myles does not play? You're definitely going to take a hit if Myles doesn't play, a massive hit here, right? Even if you draft Abdul Carter. Obviously, Mike Hall is going to be a big deal for this team going forward. I think Alex Wright's going to play some inside-outside for you. And then you got Isaiah McGuire, who's going to play outside there, probably anchor the other side. And then you'll probably want to get another interior defensive lineman. So you have Dalvin Tomlinson. You could keep him on contract. You could go for Darius Phillips or other options that are there. I don't have my draft sheet in front of me, right? But there are a lot of interior defensive linemen in this class. I think the reason you haven't seen me mock a ton of them to the Cleveland Browns is because the depth at running back and tight end, I feel like are more prescient for the Cleveland Browns to take advantage of in 2025 than interior defensive line, where I think you might be able to carry one extra draft pick given how loaded the Browns D-line room already is. So I just don't think there's enough space there to draft like 3 or 2 defensive tackles in this year's class and be able to roster everybody that you want to roster, right? The next question comes from Beastie Matthew, who says, Q, do you think our wide receiver room is good enough, or do you think we need to add more in free agency? Because I don't think there's any room or any wide receivers worth drafting this year. I don't know if I would go that far. I think there are certainly some wide receivers worth drafting this year. It might be the case that there's not any wide receiver that makes sense for a specific position on the board where the Cleveland Browns are. So you might have to reach to get a wide receiver. But yeah, I think wide receiver is one of those positions where it needs to have more added to it, but it's fine enough right now that I would feel like, see, the thing with wide receiver is what you need is a number one receiver, right? You got enough guys to be serviceable outside of Jerry Jeudy that you don't really need to draft a bunch of dudes in the second and third round. What you need if you're the Cleveland Browns is a true one, and you're only going to get that in the first or second round of a draft. And I don't think this is the draft to go get you a number one wide receiver. So I would say probably not going to do wide receiver this year unless they do it in the first or second round. IW says, how much of Myles Garrett's legacy do you think will be impacted if he forces himself out of the Browns and then doesn't win a Super Bowl somewhere else? I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think his legacy is going to be that impacted if he never wins a Super Bowl. Like, I don't feel like people look at edge rushers like that. Like, I've never asked myself how many Super Bowls has Lawrence Taylor or Reggie White have won. I'm sure they've won them, right? Because they played on some good teams. I think Reggie White won one with the Packers. Lawrence Taylor definitely won some with the New York Giants. But it's never been like a part of the conversation of greatness for an edge rusher. Like, that's usually something that we reserve for quarterbacks, right? Because those are the players that have that much of an impact. I think it's more of a personal thing where he just wants to win a Super Bowl or play in the Super Bowl at the very least. And I understand that, right? We all got our personal goals, especially at work. My whole thing is just like, if we're talking about his legacy, don't nobody care how many rings Myles Garrett wins. Like, that's not going to matter. Like, what have we ever argued about how many rings a position player has? Like, who goes into the left tackle Hall of Fame argument and goes, well, Joe Thomas ain't got no rings. And if we do start doing that stuff, I'm ejecting. I'm going into space, and I'm living in the void because we have officially hit peak stupid. If that's what the conversations we're having. But yeah, man, do we even, like, why do we act like a edge rusher Super Bowl ring count matters? Quarterback, obviously, that's a thing, right? If we're talking about being a star basketball player, sure, that's definitely a thing. Like, is somebody really going to tell you J.J. Watt trash because he never played in the Super Bowl? Were you even aware that J.J. Watt never played in the Super Bowl? Did you care that J.J. Watt never played in the Super Bowl? Because I'm pretty sure it's the first time this has ever come up in a conversation. Nobody cares about it. So, like, I just don't get the legacy part of this. Like, giving that credence. Who gives a damn how many rings an edge rusher has? In terms of, like, how you measure their greatness. Like, nobody, that's not a thing. Luke Van Ness says, say the Browns pick Shador at 2. Who are the other 2 QBs you're bringing in? Do you bring in Kirk and Aaron? Like, hell no, I ain't bringing in no Aaron Rodgers. And that's like, could you imagine? I would probably try to bring in Kirk Cousins or, old reliable Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett is the dude you bring in when you need to bench somebody. Jacoby Brissett, Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod's got a job already. So probably Jacoby. Kirk's not going to take that job if that's what the option is. But that's it for the Q&A. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.